My career sucks.
Sex just isn't the same.
What's my purpose?
Where did this fat come from?
My relationship is killing me.
I'll never be happy.
My debt is piling up. I'll never find love. Why can't I be like other gay guys? Hey guys, it's time to get a grip, stop whining, make a bold move, and do something amazing with your 40-plus gay life. Let's get to the show with your Tell It Like It Is host, Rick Clemons, who does his best to never act like a dick or a diva unless you act like one first.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of 40 Plus Gay Men Gay Talk. And just a quick reminder, if you want to be part of our community, you can join our community on Facebook. And you can also show up for our monthly chats. Just go to gaymenschats.com or go to rickclemons.com. You'll find the Gay Men's Chats. Part of the reason for the community is what comes up here on the episodes is stuff we go deeper into in our communities. We got a little special community thing coming up, so you might want to go to the website and check that up. That's going to come up in September. It's going to be off schedule, but before we kind of move forward, speaking of community, what is the hardest part for us as gay men? A lot of times, being in community, finding our ways to communicate, showing up at events and going, oh, I don't know what to say or how to show up and what to do. Well, that's what we're talking about today. It seems that the pandemic sent us down a path where connecting and all that stuff we're relearning to walk in our little connecting shoes, or high heels, whatever you guys want to say. And one of the greatest things that I've learned is finding people who specialize in helping us do these things can actually help you do it better. And I happen to have met our guest today, Rob Giardinelli, through another program that I work in with my speaking work. And I found what he did really intriguing. And I thought, that'd be a really good fit for our podcast here, helping gay men better connect, especially if you're in professional settings. But Rob's going to show you that you can do it wherever you're at. So I'm really excited to have you here, Rob. Thanks for being here and being willing to come chat about what you do to help us be better at connecting and communicating and showing up in those spaces when, it's an event. Let's not be a wallflower. So thanks for being here, bud.
Well, first, thank you for having me. So
of course.
What I really do is I do workshops, I do keynotes, and I do, coaching and consulting to help people, especially in client-facing situations, be more comfortable and confident at in-person events so that they can grow their sales but more importantly, develop deeper relationships with people, because anyone who's in the selling space, and I know plenty of successful gay men over 40 who are in, sales of some sort. Sales is a relationship business, just like most businesses are a relationship business. And what I found coming out of the pandemic, and I've been going to social events pretty much as a full-time job for about 15 years now. And coming out of the pandemic, I found that even people who I were like, okay, they're like the best of the best, and they stumbled and were rusty. I was rusty. And I've noticed that rust is still there several years after we kind of started getting out there again. And that's really why I put together a practice where I can help people become more comfortable and confident. And we're also in a world now, just because so much is shared on social media, a lot of the times the personal and the professional blurs. And I found that a lot of the stuff that I teach can really be transferred, maybe not everything, but a lot of it can be transferred into more personal settings. And it's just kind of really understanding your room, understanding your audience, and understanding what the event is and what the event's about, so that you can make the most of the event and really contribute. And people are like, hey, you're a really good guest. I want to invite you back.
Right. Well, and that only not only applies in these professional settings, but it applies in our everyday normal social life, and so much of what happened, I hear this all the time from guys in the community and guess on like, hey, the pandemic threw us for a loop. And now, in our LGBTQ spaces, for sure, a lot of the gathering spots have gone away, the bars and stuff, because they didn't make it through. And I don't know, for whatever reason, the bars are going away in general. But also, I think what is beautiful about what you do, Rob, is you can apply this in your professional setting, but you can also bring it over to these other spaces, because it's not easy being a communicator in a social setting. Let's just be honest about it. Everybody goes for the, what is it you do, right? And it's like, okay, well, you tell them, but you always want to be interesting. Years ago, a friend of mine who's really good at this networking stuff, I remember she said, you want to be interested instead of just the interesting person. You want both, but the more interested you are, the more they're somebody else, because let's be honest, we all just want it all to be all about us, right? So
well, you
we're
hit
just
the nail on the
speaking
head with
truths.
that. You hit the nail on the head with that. The one thing that I have learned is people love to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many dinners I've been to where I've sat next to somebody and literally said four things in an hour, because people will just talk and they'll ramble. Now, if they have a lot of layers to them and know how to tell a story, that can be a really good, fascinating, interesting thing. And you're just like, wow, I'm holding court with the CEO and they're telling me all their secrets, versus someone who's just kind of a blowhard know-it-all and kind of talks about them. So there's the talking about them and they only talk about themselves to make themselves feel better. That's one lane that you find of people that talk about themselves. But the ones that you can kind of latch on to and really have good communication and engagement with, especially if you're an introvert, and I'm an introvert myself, is people that they'll talk about things that are outside themselves. They may be things that they experience, but they're talking about the broader world outside themselves. And those people are a wealth of information. And especially if you're in a sales role, like say at an industry conference, couple cocktails in, people will open up all kinds of great intel, all kinds of great things, and then you get to go back. The hero is not necessarily the extrovert who holds court, because the extrovert who holds court is holding court. They're not really gathering information per se, they're giving information. Introverts, on the other hand, can go back and be like, I was a good compliment to the extrovert because this person held court and was really dynamic, but I was able to kind of have these side conversations while the extrovert was doing that, and I found out all these really, really cool things.
And I think the interesting piece of all of this is when you allow yourself to be the kind of the active / passive listener. When you're a really good listener, so many people say, well, I don't know how to, I don't know how to carry on a conversation, or I don't know what to say to people. I'm like, then just listen to what somebody says and pick up off of what they say. Now, the trick is, okay, that person has to give you a breath so you can say something. It was so interesting over the holiday weekend. This was clear back in July 4th when we had some people visiting us, and the person visiting us, I don't want to say a whole lot about, because I want to be very, very cognizant of, private stuff, but they are from another country, and it's always really fascinating to them that somebody hears their accent and then, oh, where are you from? And then it's just question after question after question after question after question. And they don't give him the opportunity to break in. And so then for him, I would say he's kind of an introvert. He really shuts down. And I actually got to witness this firsthand. I was like, oh, this is interesting, because we had gone to some wineries and a friend of ours happened to be working at the winery. And so she came over, and she's one of those that will always she asks, love her to death, but there's times that questions get asked. And it was really interesting to see the number of questions she kept asking him. And then he just kept shutting down. So, of course, he's like, what do I do, Rick? How do I do this? I said, well, first of all, be open to interjecting. Don't be afraid to interject. Well, that's not my nature. I'm like, well, you want to solve this problem, but then you're like, well, that's not my nature. So this is where, to your point, I think you made, it becomes a muscle, really, right, Rob?
Absolutely. It becomes a muscle, but like with your friend, what I do in those situations is, after a particular question, I'll give a short answer and I'll say, and I'd love to hear about your experience with that. And I'd love, so that's, even if you're an introvert, you're not really doing a conversation. You're just asking the question back to them, so that it creates a little bit more balance. And, extroverts are going to take the oxygen. That's just kind of what they do. Introverts, take in the oxygen. You kind of need that balance, so that the balance of those introverted and extroverted energies in a room. You can never have a room with just introverts or just extroverts. Neither is a good healthy environment. And I've never been to a successful event that didn't have both of those. So there's that on the shorter end. For people that, the what do I say, I want to go back to that, and when you had mentioned that in the beginning, is what I will do is, if someone's really, really, really talkative and they give a really, really, really long answer, what I do to take the stress out of what I'm going to say next is, the first thing that they say in that response or in what they're talking about that you have a question about, just have that in your mind. So that way, you know, if you want to white noise it, you can do all kinds of things. And then when they give you that time, you can go back to that. And there are people that, you know, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I talked about that 10 minutes ago. I am so sorry. Tell me about your point of view on that. You know, some people will have the grace with that. The ones that are truly just, I only want to talk about and focus on me. And for me, that's a good signifier as to whether I want to continue talking to that person. If the person just continues to go, it's like, okay, our time together is limited and I'm going to work on making a graceful exit so that they can fascinate somebody else with whatever it is that they're talking about.
One of the other things that I learned along the way here is to kind of observe the room and look for like the odd number of pairings. Okay. If there's like if there's 4 people, you're kind of breaking in, but if it's 3, you could be the 4th person. If it's 5, you could be the 6th person. I'm not saying you can't walk up to like 2 people talking, but sometimes 2s are actually kind of harder to break into because they're kind of already having a conversation, right? But when there's that 3rd, it's almost like there needs to be some balance into maybe what's going on. And so this is always something I have, you know, worked with my clients on is like, look for the odd numbers. Doesn't mean go count the room. Okay, wait, 1, 2, 3. But it's pretty easy to observe some of this stuff too. So what are some of those things like, again, let's kind of go to the professional setting because conferences are just notorious for like, you can actually, at least I have been able to see, you can kind of actually see the people who are like, okay, I'm coming in, I'm having my obligatory drink and I'm just leaving because I don't know how to do this. So what are the things that you would say is I'm that wallflower, I'm that introvert, or it may not even be because you're introverted, honestly. It just may be this is not your thing, but you're there for a purpose. So what would be some steps you would encourage people to like step into that and start to work the muscle, Rob?
Well, I'm really glad you talked about, you know, scanning and observing. So that's the first thing I do with any room I walk into, and I scan the room for lots of different things. So I scan the room to make sure where are all the bars? If there's a lot of events will have activations, where are the activations? And every single room, no matter how crowded it is, always has a quiet pocket in it. There is always kind of this area that for whatever reason people just energetically avoid. Just have an understanding of those, you know, of those things. And then, you know, where are the exit signs to the restrooms? Like just kind of have a lay of where you are. And what I always do is I go back to those bars I looked at and I will actually go to the bar with the longest line. And I will stand in that line. I will put my foot away. Put my phone away.
Yes, please put your foot away, Rob. Okay.
Take your foot out of your mouth, put your phone away. And that way you can talk to the person in front of you or the person behind you. And the beauty of doing it in line is there is a shelf life. And I never make the goal of it. And in fact, I've probably done it 400 or 500 times over the years, probably even more than that. I've maybe gotten 2 business cards out of it. It's never really about getting a contact for me. It's about warming myself up, kind of that practice, you know, that practice rep or even the stretching exercise before you actually go and you actually engage. Because you can talk to the person in front of you, you can talk to the person behind you. And the great thing is the person in front of you gets their drink and goes, and there's just an end to the conversation that you don't even have to think about. It just ends. And I do want to say though that, you know, you were kind of talking about trios and duos. I will look at duos because kind of what I was talking about earlier about people that are really long-winded. If you look at 2 people, sometimes you can tell 2 people are really in conversation. Other times you can see one person's kind of looking over the place. If you're paying attention to that stuff, that's actually a good time to interject. In fact, that's how I actually met my husband. Got cornered by somebody who just wouldn't leave him alone, and I could tell that, and this was before I even started doing this, but I used, you know, my background in sales and having gone to sales conferences for 10 years at that point to do that. But I just saw that he was just disinterested. So initially it was, I'm just going to rescue this person. She wouldn't leave for 10 minutes. But when I finally said, let's text each other our number, she finally left. And I never thought I'd hear from him again, but surprise.
And here we are.
Back, and here we are 15 years later.
Okay, so there you go, guys. Dating techniques also are coming out of this podcast here, but it is interesting. So you said something I want to make sure the listeners kind of understand. You said activation point. So give us a little insight. What does that look like in a room?
So an activation could be a photo booth. It could be a, like a sketch artist who might sketch, like stuff behind me, you can kind of see sketches.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there might be like someone like a sketch artist or someone that's doing like typewritten poetry. You give them like a phrase and they do that. It could also be like I've even seen where you can kind of make a hat or put something on a hat or on a
Right.
t-shirt or something. And those things are more, especially if you're kind of a slightly more creative person and you don't necessarily want to be there, it's a great way to get immersed in the experience of it
Mm-hmm.
in a way where you don't necessarily have to engage with people as much. So like I talked about the bar and in a client facing event where your boss is expecting you to really mingle, that's a
Yep.
great thing. But if you're doing that along with that and you've got the souvenir and the takeaway of it, and especially if you had a good time, that's why I like those types of things is if you have a good time,
Yep.
that serves as a visual reminder for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've got them all over the bookcases around my house of various things. And I remember fun times that I had, with various people and or sometimes even the artists themselves.
Yep, yep, yep. I also find it interesting too, that activation point can be like the name tag booth where you first come in. One of the things that happened a few years ago, I was at National Speakers Association and there was an LGBTQ event. Okay, so we're at this big conference. So we all already have the name badges, right? And what they had us do when we came in the room is they're like, surrender your badge or put it away. But they kind of did the whole, we're having you surrender your badge for this event and put a name tag on with something interesting about you on the name tag, but not your name. And I thought that was a really great icebreaker sort of thing. Like, okay, you put something compelling. So I walked in and I put world record holder. Of course, I got a lot of attention, which is not a lie either. I mean, I do. I hold 2 world records for silly, stupid things, but I hold them. And so it's interesting because now you get away from, oh, what is it you do, into, oh, tell me, this is really interesting to learn something personal about that person. And there's something, at least from my experience, Rob, that when you have those kind of activation points of here's a new way to start the conversation, you might actually stay more engaged. Second story out of that whole conference, I think, well, that was the first year. That wasn't the first year it was the first year I went to that one. I fly into Orlando Airport. It's because of delays and everything. It's like middle of the night, and I just want to get to the hotel. I just want to get to the hotel. And it was right when Uber and everything was just becoming something, and so they couldn't decide where the Uber drivers were supposed to pick you up. So some agents were sending us upstairs, others were like downstairs. So standing out there, and there's a guy standing out there, and finally I said, "Oh, it's great waiting in the middle of the night to get picked up, right?" Like, well, that's just kind of a stupid line to say. But he's like, yeah, he goes, this is crazy. He goes, I'm trying to get to this conference. And I said, oh, me too. I said, where are you going? He goes, oh, national speakers. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know why we didn't end up riding together. Something came up and he had to go inside or something. Man, I thought he didn't like me. But it was so interesting. That little conversation set the tone for how many times we interacted because we'd see each other and it's like, oh, we know each other. And then he started introducing me to people and I started interested. So it was a really good, like, oh, here's an activation that had nothing to do with being at the conference. And I know that's a big stretch for some people. Like, I could never talk to a stranger. I'm not going to do that. Mom said, don't talk to strangers. But I think it's an interesting piece to do and to follow through on. So what do you do? Let's kind of go to that, what you just set up with about your husband. So here's this, you can see he's like miserable. How do you exit out if it's just really awkward? What is one of the best ways you've seen to like just exit out of a conversation? Like, okay, this just isn't working.
Go to your anchor and your anchor's your drink.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to refresh it. And if someone was like, well, what's a way I can tell somebody I don't like them without telling them I don't like them? If you've got a full drink, say, you know what, my drink is flat and I've got to go have a lovely evening and I hope you meet some great folks. Like there's ways to do it without coming across as crass or mean, but you can still kind of get that.
Right.
So you're not bottling it in, but you're at least getting it out in a way that it's allowing you to release so you're not lingering on it. Because sometimes people will linger in on the bad moments of an event and then it sabotages them and then they either want to leave right away or they're the ones sulking in the corner or they don't want to go to events again because they get focused on that one bad engagement. And what I always tell people is I always ask them, of the last 100 people you met, did you like all 100 people? And no one is going to say yes. And it's the same thing with events. You will run into people that you don't vibe with, and there's nothing wrong with that. And being the person who initiates facilitating the end of the conversation, you're not just helping yourself, but you're also helping that other person.
Yep.
So that you both can move on with your day. And, when you get, when people ask, well, what's the key to get invited back to events? Like if there's a really cool, like networking event within your space, or there's kind of a cool social event that mostly CEOs go to, how do I go to that? You're able to do those sorts of things because that does get back to the event host.
Yep.
And they'll just say, you know what, so-and-so and I didn't, and I've had that happen where I didn't have that in common with Rob, but I really appreciated that he made me feel good about myself and we both went on about our evening, sort of.
And I also think too, it's the intention that you go into events with. If you go like, okay, this is going to be an end all be all, it's got to be all this. If you set the standards so high, you're probably setting yourself up for disappointment. The event is not there to give you all the contacts you need to get to your next speaking gig or your next sell. You're the catalyst to make that happen. And I've seen that. I mean, there's some events that I no longer go to because I'm just kind of like, it's not my jam. Doesn't mean the event was bad. It just wasn't my jam. I don't, and some of them I'm just like, why would I go again? I don't need this. I learned long ago I would go to events to escape doing the real stuff I need to do. So there's true confessions right there, guys. And even in social events, sometimes, back in the years of dating, I would show up at these social events that somebody was hosting, like, okay, well, maybe I'll meet Mr. Right here. And I went in with that whole thing. And then I didn't meet anybody that like, oh, these aren't my people. I'm like, well, you knew they weren't your people to begin with. One person or two people were like your kind of people. And you're like, why did you put yourself through this? So I think pre-gaming your own ways of being there and really asking yourself, why am I really going? And am I setting the bar too high? Not the ball, the bar too high. And then go, oh, see, it didn't work. That's not fair to the event, the host, and none of that. And I think you got to own, we each have to own our reason for being there.
You have to own it, but you also, energy is contagious. And if you think about what separates the best events that people always want to go to is every single person in that room, or 95% of the people in that room, want to be there. Yep. And that energy is contagious. Because I've gone and I've done the reps, I can always tell when someone doesn't want to be there. Yep. I can just kind of look at their face, and sometimes it may be a couple that I know, and I can just see one half of them that's having no part of it.
No part.
I'll go in the other direction, and maybe I'll run into the other half of that couple later on. Yep. That type of thing happens all the time, but you're able to spot that energy. And if you want to be there, especially if you're a gay man and you're the only gay person in the room, if you act like you want to be there, there are going to be other people that want to be there that are naturally going to come up to you, and they're not going to care that you're gay or not. It's just, they can see you either, you dressed in the theme because it was a themed event and you did something clever. You're smiling, you're engaging with other people. People can see you're talking from one person to the next, or they see that you're having fun at an activation. Like I've had lots of great conversations with people where I'm just genuinely having fun there, and it draws other people in, and they'll ask, what do you like about this? And it just, the conversations can just flow from there.
Yeah. And I think that's it, is finding how you can make it work, and not putting the pressure on yourself either. Like if you're just really starting to get comfortable in your own skin in these sort of spaces, don't feel like you have to go all out. My husband and I recently did a LGBTQ cruise, small riverboat cruise. And it was interesting building up to that because there's theme nights, of course. We wouldn't be gay if we didn't have theme nights on our vacations. And I'm always like, I don't want to do this. And then of course I'm lying. It's like, okay, well, I don't have to have the most fabulous outfit, but I want to do something, right? And it was just interesting to see some people didn't, and that was cool, because that's not their jam. But then others were over the top, and then others like me were kind of like, I'm playing, but I'm not playing full out. But I felt part of it. And I think that's the piece too, is find where your part of it works for you. If it's not satisfying you, you might want to ask that question. Why isn't it satisfying me? Maybe I do need to participate more. Maybe I need to participate less. Back to our little extroverts. A lot of times those are the ones that they want all the attention, and then they're disappointed because they didn't get all the attention. It's like, well, maybe you need to rethink your approach to these things. So it's very fascinating to see the human construct in nature that comes out of all of these kind of events, for sure.
Well, it is, and I'm glad you brought up the, the extrovert who can't really seem to engage in the conversation. It goes back to, what we were talking about earlier and that you had mentioned about you have to be interested to be interesting, and that's where the extroverts who hold court, that comes into play because they kind of get that everyone around them's an ensemble and it can't just be all about them. It means they're going to have the stage most of the time, but it's not a one-man show. It's there's other people that they're going to bring in at various points, and we'll probably go back to them. But people feel included. And if you're an introvert, you just want to be seen. You don't have to be seen the whole time, but you do want to be seen. And anyone who does go to an event, whether they're the most introverted person or the most extroverted person, they're going to feel more comfortable if they feel seen. And that's the one thing that I have learned is if someone sees you, and it could be something as simple as you're at a professional event and you're wearing a pocket square, and someone comes up and they appreciate that you're wearing that. It doesn't have to be anything big or major,
right?
But it's even the little things. And that's why, when I do work with people, we talk a lot about the small, fine details, because a detail-oriented person will be drawn to you, because of that. And you can probably have a little bit more of a authentic and deeper conversation as a result of that, because they're going to look at things a little bit more deeply.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just the simplest little thing, like you said, a pocket square. Again, back to the cruise. We were on the cruise, and so one night was a disco night, right? I had a heck of a time like figuring this one out. I'm like, really, I'm Mr. Stage Performer. All this should have been a piece of cake, but it's just I didn't want to go the traditional. Okay, so let's go there. There's like the real creative in my head goes, nah, you can't be like everybody else. And so I went all the way from like 70s bell bottom, like just a vest and, hairy chest hanging out, all that. I'm like, no, it's not really 70s. It's more disco. Long story short, I'm like, I finally got some. I'm just going very simple. Glitzy pants, glitzy shirt, Elton John, sort of big glass, all that sort of look. I had seen a necklace that said disco and all dazzly. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. That's so common. And one of the guys that I enjoyed watching the most, he came in a black t-shirt like what I have on camera today, in simple black pants, and all he had was the chain that had the big glitzy disco. I'm like, you know what? He made his statement really simple, but yet you notice he's the one I really remember. Like, oh, maybe because I'm like, bitch, I stressed for weeks trying to find this damn outfit. He just bought the damn necklace. But it is interesting to see these crazy things we do to ourselves. But you said something too about most of the people are there really want to be there. And it took me back to World Domination Summit was a conference I attended almost all the years that it was in existence. And that was really a vibe that everybody who went to that really wanted to be there because it was such a unique conference. We did crazy things. That's where I got the world record. We broke some world records, all that sort of stuff. You could hold your own meetups for anything under the sun. They gave us time for like, if you wanted to have a meetup about entrepreneurship or how to travel hack or whatever, or in my world, if you wanted to have a meetup for gay men and talk about all the stuff going on for gay men. One year out of 3,500 people, there was one attendee who really made it known he did not really want to be there because he was fighting it every step of the way and it was just interesting because the rumbling started to happen like, oh, he didn't want to be filmed. So wherever he went, he's like, I can't be filmed. He'd see the film crew out and if they started to approach, he's like, I don't want to be on camera. When I was in my little meetup, he showed up so I'm like, oh, this is interesting. The trouble guy is, oh, he must be gay. And so I started asking, kind of let's go deep because it was a go deep sort of thing. I'm not going to answer those questions. And so then I kind of, when they were doing some dyad sort of work, I stepped out and I was taking photos and he came and he goes, please don't take my picture. I said, I'm not taking your picture. I said, don't worry, I'm not. He goes, oh. He goes, how did you know? I said, because we've heard that you don't want your picture taken. And he was kind of shocked. And I was like, I almost wanted to say to him, do you even really want to be here? Do you want to be? Because I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. So guys, if you're listening, I'm not picking on you, but make sure you're intentional about why you're going and don't make it everybody else's pain to have you present. because that's not going to do you or the rest of the group any good. So
Absolutely. It's an interesting example because one thing I do work with people on is I tell them to find the event photographer, because here's the deal. If you're at an event that's hosted by somebody, let's say a CEO, and there's 300 people there, that CEO, if it's a 3-hour cocktail party, that's like 35 seconds, 40 seconds a person. They may or may not remember having said hello to you. However, if there is a photographer, and I will always, any event I go to, I find the photographer. Thankfully, I've got really good relationships with a lot of good photographers throughout Texas now. I will find them. I will get a photograph of, me and my husband, me and whomever else, just to show that I was there. And that serves as another visual reminder to whoever the host is of that. And they may be like, oh yeah, he told me about this, or he connected me with this, or whatever it was that I may have done to contribute to the evening's success. That serves as another visual reminder. So don't be, even if you are like, oh, I'm horrible with photos. I was one of those people. And when I first started writing, I hated taking my photo 15 years ago. And it's still not my favorite thing in the world, but I've learned that I'm actually good at it. And what my husband would do is, at the time we had a print magazine and we would cover the social events, he was like, I want you to find one photo from one event we went to that you like, and we are going to put it in. And after a couple of years, I was like, objectively, I look good in this photo. So I was able to kind of take me out of it and be like, okay, am I good in every photo I take? Absolutely not. But I realized that it's never 0-400 and it's never 100-400. It's somewhere in between that.
Exactly. I love that. I'm right there. I mean, I'm kind of the pushback on photos, and then finally I'm just like, hey, it is what it is. Some are going to be really good and some aren't going to be really good. A couple of months ago when our friends were here that we talked about the whole winery thing, they were taking lots of photos. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's say, and there were a couple. I'm like, that's actually a really good photo, because we were in the cellar room and all that sort of stuff. And I realized I just wasn't giving a crap. Like, just take the photo. Let's go. As soon as I start giving a crap, that's when I don't take a good photo, And I feel like those are really great opportunities. I think another good opportunity depends on the setting, but have fun with the staff too. Like, I always, if I find a bartender that's really good in an event, I talk that bartender up and I make sure they get the longest, kind of get the longest line, because I want to help them get some good tips. There's just these interesting little things. And one of the other things too, and it's not because I'm kissing ass to kind of get something. If there's a team member, like somebody on the meeting planner coordination team or somebody who's part of that team, I get the photographer and like, I want a picture with this person because they really made me feel good and glad to be here. I want them to hear that come out of my mouth, because that's part of my way of acknowledging them. But I want them to have a picture with an attendee that shows this attendee is really having fun. They're happy, because that speaks volumes for when they start doing the post-conference evaluation things. I know it's not like, oh, look, XYZ team member got this many photos. That's not what it's for. It's like, hey, I want to help them in whatever way I can to help them feel really, really good. So, well, Rob, I appreciate everything you've been sharing here, man. Any last minute suggestion before we wrap it up here today?
Just remember that any great event's an ensemble. You don't have to be the star, but just know that if you got an invitation, you got it for a reason. And there's many other people they could have invited, but they chose you. And there is power in that. And especially if you're walking in as the only gay man in a room, there's nothing wrong with that. I take that, frankly, as a compliment more than anything else. You may be the only gay person that person knows.
Could be.
But that's how visibility starts, is, you've got to put yourself out there, and you've got to be present, and you've got to act like you want to be there. And once you do that, more invitations will come in. You'll feel more comfortable. You'll develop deeper relationships, and you'll become more successful as a professional and a human being.
Yeah, I think you grow a lot too when you're not, I love being with our community. So what I'm about to say is like, no, I don't want to do this. But I've also found when I'm not with my community, I actually grow a lot. I learned to have different kinds of conversations. I learned to, quote, not make my gay be the focus of everything. I find it more easily to just be like, oh yeah, this is my husband, which I've always kind of been that way. I'm very casual in how I bring up being gay. I find that the more casual I am about those things, I'm not going to say everybody's accepting, but it is less of a, quote, focus or a contention point. And I think that's what you can learn when you're in these very mixed spaces too, of the casual bits, like, you know, somebody's talking about this. Oh yeah, my husband and I did that with our daughter too. Okay, there it is. It's there. It wasn't like, oh, you need to know, you know, and I'm not hiding, guys. Again, I'm not saying hide who we are, but I think there's these pieces of this is part of this whole networking, beautiful thing, that socializing thing we can do too. Maybe they didn't like it after you said it, but that it didn't come up in that moment. Only once in a while will it come up, but rarely do I see that come up. So that's really great advice, Rob. I so appreciate you. If they want to reach out, connect with you, learn more about what you do, where's the best place for our listeners to connect with you, man?
So they can go to Rob Giardinelli, and GIARDINELLI.com. You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook at that handle. So thankfully, It's not the most common name, and I was able to claim mantle on all of them.
Yay! So you're the king of your own, domain.
King of my own name. Yes.
Yeah, own name and domain, which can be really interesting. I mean, that can be hard sometimes. You're like, oh, that's such a unique name, and then suddenly you're like, oh wait, I thought it was super unique, and now I can't even get my own domain. So, but I love it. So, well, Rob, thanks again, man. I'm so glad we got connected through the work that we do on your speaking business. And I'm glad that you brought this to us to help guys who are in that professional space, social space, whatever it may be. I hope everybody takes something away from this to help you the next time you're standing in those social spaces going, I don't want to be here. This sucks. I don't, you know what? Give it a chance. Give it a chance. Try some of the techniques that Rob brought up, and see what might make that event even more enjoyable. So thanks for being listeners, guys. Take care. And until next week, go out and keep being unapologetic yourself. No excuses and no fears. Take care, everybody.
That's a wrap for 40 Plus. Gay men, gay talk, where size doesn't matter. We drop our bullshit, get over our screwed up fears, make bold moves, and live life without apologies. Don't forget to join us on Facebook at 40 Plus, Gay Men, Gay Talk, where the conversations continue.